Hey guys, welcome back to more English 214. Today we are going to talk about the chapter The Storm from Kindred. So I'm going to just be flipping back and forth. I didn't make a PowerPoint today because I didn't feel like it, honestly. Sometimes PowerPoint just like drains my soul. So I'm just making a note sheet, which I will put up on Blackboard after this recorded lecture. And then, so this week you were supposed to read The Storm, and then next week you're supposed to finish the book, which is it's very small, comparatively speaking, to the last two chapters. So you have The Rope and Epilogue. And then there's a critical essay in the back if you're feeling spicy and you just want to read that. So there's only like this much of the book left. So next week will be our final discussion about Kindred, and then we will move on to Parable of the Sower. So a few of you reached out last week after being missing for a bit, saying that you didn't have Kindred yet and you had not been able to get it, or it hadn't been delivered to your house. So I found a janky PDF online that I bought for like $3. Hopefully they are not like running my credit card crazy. I'm going to check that. The website was a little suspicious, and I'm not sure it's actually illegal at all. Check credit card. But I did post it on Blackboard. It said it was a textbook website, but I think that was a lie. However, I bought it anyways because I know some of you were struggling. It is also posted on Blackboard under readings. It does not have page numbers, but from the couple of quick checks I did by flipping through my book and flipping through that book, the book was legit. I did not look at every single page in the book. So if in the middle of the book you suddenly find something horrible, like neo-Nazi propaganda or something like that, please let me know so I can, throw it out. Anything else? It's May. We survived April. This is week 8 of online learning, and our semester is only 12 weeks long. So after this lecture, you only have 4 more lectures from me, and then we're done. So this week we'll talk about Kindred, and next week we'll finish Kindred, and then we just have 3 weeks for Parable, which I think we can do it in 3 weeks. I will also offer you some extra credit because it is a graphic novel. See, it's just like cartoons. I bet a graphic novelist would not like it if I said cartoons. But I think it should be a quick read. If you cannot get your hands on this, I've looked online to see if there's a way to find it. The thing is, you kind of have to take a picture of every single page. This is when I need a work study. But just let me know, please. If there's anyone out there who really cannot get your hands on it, like for whatever reason it is, please let me know. Also, at this point, we'll probably be doing 3 reading and discussion posts on this. And there have been several extra credit opportunities. So you might be able to just kind of fill in those reading and discussion posts with extra credit opportunities so that you can still keep your high grade. Something else, if you do not understand the credit, no credit option for this semester and the spring semester, please call me. Let's just have a conversation about it. Make sure you've watched the video beforehand, because if I have to just tell you all the same stuff I made in the video, I might be a little annoyed. Otherwise, just like text me and I'll just call you and we can chat. Okay? One more thing. If you can find this copy of Parable of the Sower, it's the actual novel, so it's a lot more reading. You're welcome to read that instead of the graphic novel if you'd like. They're both super good. Okay, so let's talk about The Storm. So this is going to be a slightly abbreviated lecture today because I'm not feeling great. Do you guys just live thinking you have coronavirus all the time? I went to the laundry room last night to do our family's laundry, and I came back upstairs, and I wear my mask down there. We've had 4 people in my building die, and lots of people sick, so I've been very careful. But I came back up last night, and I forgot to wash my hands, and then I ate a clementine, and then I had a massive panic attack. So I'm probably just being a hypochondriac, and I'm probably don't have coronavirus. I'm probably just PMSing or something, but haven't been feeling fabulous today. So I'm going to just make this quick and dirty for all of us. All right, so the storm in Kindred. So, every time you read something, you have to consider every single word the author chooses. So the title of this, The Storm, should be symbolic and signify something to you. Like, why is it called The Storm? Like, is there actually a storm in it? Like, when she finds Rufus, when she returns to Rufus in this chapter, he is face down in a puddle outside in the rain. So is it that storm? That seems a little too literal of a translation of the title. So what is the storm referring to? Just have that kind of going on in the back of your head over here, like while we go over just like the what happened. So plot points. What happened in this chapter? So remember that Kevin in the last chapter and Dana, the fight, they reunite. He's been in the 19th century for 5 years. He comes back. She goes back to the 20th century, comes back to the 19th century. It's only a few days for her. It's 5 years for him. She finally finds him. They reunite at the end. Rufus tries to shoot them to keep them from riding off on a horse together, and that threat of death sends Dana back to 1976. And right before she's about to time travel, Kevin jumps on her back, which had just been whipped, and he is able to travel with her. So they return back to 1976, and Kevin realizes that the 5 years that he has been gone is actually only 8 days in 1976, and his mind is just like he can't process anything. He's being a little bit of a jerk, actually. I find him a little annoying personally as a woman reading this. I'm just like, get your shit together. But he's really discombobulated. He's a little ragey. He's got some, white male rage going on there. And he's acting weird and rude, and he's treating her he's very sharp around the edges. And she's trying to console him and say, it's hard coming back because she's done it multiple times at this point. And he's just not having any of it. So after a whole afternoon of him having a mantrum and stomping around the house, she actually travels back to Rufus. Rufus pulls her back. So she's only home for an afternoon, and then she's pulled back again. But now it's 6 years later in the 19th century. So Rufus is a totally grown man. He's very sick with malaria. I don't know what you guys know about malaria. I know some of you who are from the Caribbean and or West Africa understand that malaria is a very severe illness to have and never really goes away. She finds him outside, kind of drowning in a puddle in the rain, and gets him inside, saves his life again. So at this point, Alice and Rufus have been together for 6+ years, and they have a son named Joe, who's very, very fair-skinned and has red hair. And they've lost 2 other kids, which, child mortality rates are pretty high at this point. This is why people had so many children. One, because it was an agricultural society, and you largely needed your kids to work your farm for you. As well as they need slaves to have more and more children to work the farm. But they also, there's no antibiotics. Children could die. You could die from strep throat. You could die from scarlet fever. You could die from, the flu, something very treatable in our lifespan. And forget about it if you got anything that was really bad, like appendicitis or cancer. I mean, as a kid, and you would just be gone. So she's had 1 kid. She's lost 2 from fevers, in which the doctor came and bloodlet them, which means you slice your wrist and you let blood drain out, because I think your blood is toxic or has something bad in it. It's really we don't do that anymore. Hagar has not been born yet, which is Dana's direct ancestor, and whom she believes she's called through time to ensure the birth of. And so Dana's really depressed when she gets there, and Hagar's still not there. She's like, oh, this is never going to end. Why are you coming in here?
You know, fun?
No, I'm doing a lecture.
It's next time.
Did it flip? Oh, sorry. That was my husband. I had to kick him out.
Pretty soon.
What?
I need a chance to take the kids running pretty soon.
Oh, you're going running?
Yeah.
Oh, where?
Right out to Montana.
Yeah.
Sweet. When are
Okay.
you done?
Like 30 minutes?
Okay.
I'll be done in 30 minutes to go to Red Hook. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so okay, so then shortly after she gets there, she has to nurse Rufus back to health. Although he's never going to be fully healthy because he has malaria. And then Tom Whalen dies of a heart attack. He has a heart attack. He's in the library. You know, you can envision it. You've seen it in television and in movies 100 times. Like, and she tries to give him CPR, but it doesn't work. And then Rufus is angry at Dana because she's managed to save so many people with her, like, you know, magic medicines and knowledge from the 20th century, but she couldn't save him. So he gets really angry at him, sends Dana to work in the fields, which is, I forgot to put it down here in our lecture notes, but I should add it later. It's yet another part of the slave narrative is this experience, like going into the fields and, you know, having to suffer like the slaves who worked in the field had to suffer. Margaret Whalen, Rufus's mom, returned home to the plantation from Baltimore, where she has been for many, many years. She lost twins, and then it sounds like she just like mentally went off the rails. So she's largely drugged most of the time, which is making her very nice. Oh, that's good. Dana's friend, who's a slave test, is sold. This is another key component of the slave narrative: is losing someone to this capitalistic process of buying and selling people. Alice points out to Dana that Rufus is a better man when she is around, and he sees Dana and what is this here? Get away. He sees Dana and Alice as two halves of the same woman, which is kind of gross and creepy, and you should keep that in the back of your mind. Like, he's never raped Dana or forced sex on her or tried to have sex on her, but now that he's a man and she's a woman and he's in a sexual relationship with Alice, who is kind of Dana's twin in a lot of ways because their family linkage there, you know, she says that when Dana's around, he's kinder to her, he doesn't hit her, and Alice believes that Rufus sees them as kind of like a package almost. Keep that in mind for the rest of the book. Alice begins to plan to run away again, even though her last attempt was completely traumatic and catastrophic, because she can't imagine raising her children as slaves. Because remember, she was raised free. She was only enslaved as an adult. So she's trying to get Dana to cooperate with her and get her some of this stuff, laudanum, which is an opium, like a liquid opium, to knock out the baby so she can run with the baby. So the baby would be pretty much drugged up and wouldn't be crying. And now she could run with two kids, but she's determined. And she doesn't trust Rufus to free them. Like, Dana tries to plant the idea in his head that, oh, you know, maybe you should free your kids, and he's not against it, but, you know, he doesn't really carry through with things, and Alice is like, this is never going to happen. Hagar is born. Yay! Finally! So Dana's very happy about that. But then Sam, a slave who's been kind of talking to Dana and kind of flirting with her a little, Rufus sees this happening, and as he had joked on page 230, where he asks Dana, have you found anyone you want to jump the broom with? That means, did you found anyone you want to marry? And I looked at him startled and saw that he wasn't serious. He was smiling and watching the slaves do a bowing partner changing dance to the music of a banjo. What would you do if I found someone? I asked. Sell him, he said. His smile was still in place, but there was no longer any humor in it. I noticed now that he was watching the big muscular man who tried to get me to dance. the same man who had spoken to me at the corn husking. I would have to tell Sarah to tell him not to speak to me again. He didn't mean anything, but that wouldn't save him if Rufus got angry. One husband is enough for me, I said. Kevin? Of course Kevin. He's a long way off. There was something in his tone that shouldn't have been there, and I turned to face him. Don't talk stupid. He jumped and looked around quickly to see whether anyone had heard. You watch your mouth, he said. Watch yours. He stalked away angrily. So here he's pretty much kind of trying to pick her brain if there's anyone she likes, like on the plantation, and he says, I'll sell him if I find out you like anyone. So this Sam character, who she's talking about here, comes up to her later and asks him about teaching him to read, and Rufus sees it, so he sells Sam. And like we said in previous lectures, like being sold from Maryland down into a southern state was pretty much equal to a death sentence. Like you would not survive. So Dana is filled with this intense like guilt and despair at this point. So she goes upstairs and slits her wrists in an attempt to get back to 1976. It's a pretty dark way to try to go, but she doesn't know any other way to kind of project herself and have that fear of death thrust upon herself. All right, so kind of dark. It's kind of a dark chapter. All right, so here's some like characterization moments and some themes that come up. So Kevin, let's talk about Kevin. I think there's a book called that. So Kevin, why is he so freaked out? Like, you kind of want to just be like, what's up with you, Kevin? Like, you're like a white dude. Did you watch this Louis C.K. thing that I put in YouTube? Should I play it? I think you should watch it. It's really inappropriate. But I'm going to put it in here anyways. Okay, so because you know me, I have very, very little boundaries. Let's see. Do I still have my Firefox open? Okay, here we go. Let's see if I'll take you off my YouTube page and my Facebook page into YouTube. To our channel. Wow, that's nice. Okay, my channel. What is this crap that they put on here? All right, so if you go to playlists and you go to Kindred Resources, it plays one for you, and then it gives you a list here, but this is it.
Sorry,
So Louis C.K. is a comedian who is kind of on the outs right now because he was a sexual predator. Shocker. But this is a hilarious bit on how time travel is a white privilege. And so I found myself, when Kevin comes back, and he's all like distraught about it, I'm just kind of like, what's your problem, man? Like, you're a white man. Like, I bet you did not get raped while you were there. I bet, you were obviously not enslaved. Like, what's your problem? Like, oh, maybe you were mildly inconvenienced or it was hard. Was it hard for you? I just found myself with a very kind of hard heart towards him. The Louis C.K. is very funny in this bit about time travel being really a thing exclusively safe for white men.
So negative. I'm a bummer. I don't know. I shouldn't be. I'm a very lucky guy. I got a lot going for me. I'm healthy. I'm relatively young. I'm white, which thank God for that shit, boy. That is a huge leg up. Are you kidding me? Oh, God, I love being white. I really do. Seriously, if you're not white, you're missing out because this shit is thoroughly good. But let me be clear, by the way. I'm not saying that white people are better. I'm saying that being white is clearly better. Who could even argue? If it was an option, I would re-up every year. Oh, yeah, I'll take white again. Absolutely. I'm enjoying that. I'm going to stick with white. Thank you. Here's how great it is to be white. I could get in a time machine and go to any time, and it would be fucking awesome when I get there. That is exclusively a white privilege. Black people can't fuck with time machines. A black guy in a time machine is like, hey, even before 1980, no thank you, I don't want to go. But I can go to any time. The year 2, I don't even know what's happening then. But I know when I get there, welcome, we have a table right here for you, sir. Thank you. Oh, it's lovely here in the year too. I can go to any time. In the past, I don't want to go to the future and find out what happens to white people because we're going to pay hard for this shit. You got to know that. We're not going to just fall from number 1 to 2. They're going to hold us down and fuck us in the ass forever. And we totally deserve it. But for now, Now, if you're white and you don't admit that it's great, you're an asshole. It is great. And I'm a man. How many advantages could one person have? I'm a white man. You can't even hurt my feelings. What can you really call a white man that really digs deep? Hey, cracker. Oh, ruined my day. Boy, shouldn't have called me a cracker. Bringing me back to owning land and people. What a drag.
All right, so
You're just scaring yourself.
kind of my feelings towards Kevin there. Let's see if I can get back to my other stuff. Where are you? Ah, here I am. Anyways, I found myself feeling very annoyed by Kevin. But then I took a deep breath. So Lori, let's think about his feelings. And then I thought, it's kind of interesting because it's not really, it wouldn't be a slave narrative, obviously, because white people were not enslaved in America at all. But what would the narrative story be for Kevin? Like, so if Kindred was rewritten and it wasn't about your kin, it wasn't about, or maybe it was, maybe, a rewrite of Kindred, but it's a white person who goes back and sees the endless effed up crap that went on with their historical, their kin. They're the white people hundreds and hundreds of years ago that had owned people, and how they treated them and what they did to them, and how, your ancestors, not my ancestors, maybe, what they actually were like, and how would that affect Kevin, or how would that affect me if I did that? Someone who, I have African American family, I have nieces and nephews, and a ex brother-in-law who are Black. I obviously have chosen to spend my teaching career teaching very diverse students. But Kevin, he's married to a person of color. He's made that decision, and this is the 70s too. It's not like, it's 2020. 70s are sounding pretty good right now, though, in terms of health. But so yeah, I started to think this is, Octavia Butler doesn't explore it because that's not what this story is about. That's not what Kindred's about. But there is a story there that is interesting and could probably stand to be told by some other author in some other way. So what did it mean for Kevin as a white man to travel back in time and see with his own eyes the horrors white people have perpetuated on Black bodies, especially as someone who is in love with and married to a Black woman? And how did that really affect him? Another characterization, meaning, of course, how a character changes over the course of the text, is Rufus. Now Rufus is a slave owning, plantation owning, running white man in the 1800s. He's mean, he's manipulative, but he does have this love for Dana. He's had this relationship with Dana since he was a kid. He's also had a relationship with Alice since he was a child, and Nigel, who's now also a grown man, albeit enslaved on his plantation. But what is the stronger force in Rufus's life? Is it these relationships, these personal relationships, these intimate relationships, or is it society's racist ideologies that he was raised with and raised to believe in, his white superiority over all of these Black people that he actually loves? And how can he not just get rid of the one, and how can he not follow his feelings, but instead he just chooses again and again and again to follow society instead? Some pretty big, heavy, questions about your character and what you would do. And there's a lot of symbolism in this chapter too. Like we talked about, the symbolism of even the title, the storm, and is it a literal storm, inner conflict, symbolic storm? But this chapter starts on June 18th. That's the day in 1976 in which the chapter takes place. So June 18th is the day that Dana and Kevin flip back to 1976, and then in that afternoon, Dana goes back to the 1800s, okay? So June 19th is actually an African-American holiday called Juneteenth, which some of you maybe have heard of. It's also called Freedom Day, Juneteenth, Independence Day. So this date is pretty symbolic, And so when I was first rereading this, because I think this is the third or fourth time I've read this book, I hadn't noticed this before, and I was just like, oh, like, is June 18th, Juneteenth, like in the storm, is Dana going to get some sort of independence or freedom? And in some ways she does, because Hagar is born, and that's who she's been trying to, make sure comes into being. But she's not free at the end of the book. I mean, at the end of this chapter of the storm. So here's a little Juneteenth info here, from the, reputable source of Wikipedia. Wikipedia is great though when you're reading stuff and you're just like, oh, what's laudanum? What's laudanum? I don't know what laudanum is. Oh, it's a tincture of opium containing approximately 10% powdered opium by weight. It's reddish brown, extremely bitter. Laudanum contains almost all opium alkaloids, including morphine and codeine. Woo-hoo! So Margaret Whalen was high as a kite. On this, but she pretty much just drank all the time, which kept her very calm, and is what has made her into, a nice older woman. It was probably used to treat mental illness and depression and psychosis, during this time period. But this is where, the internet is just a wealth of information when you're reading, just to look up different things. Juneteenth, which I'd heard of, but it didn't really know. I knew it was an Independence Day, but when you look at the timeline of emancipation of slaves, so it says here, I remember it was September 22nd, because that's my son's birthday, that Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, but it did not go into effect until January 1st. All right, so, but you can imagine that it didn't just magically like Thanos snap here on January 1st, like boom, everybody's free. A lot of people resisted, and several Confederate states were still, engaged in war. And so Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day or Juneteenth Independence Day, is an American holiday that commemorates June 19th, 1865, announcement of abolition of slavery in Texas, and more generally the emancipation of enslaved African Americans throughout the former Confederate States of America outside Native American lands. Texas was the most remote of the slave states, the furthest away, because Texas is kind of in the middle of the continental U.S., down the bottom, and it's freaking gigantic. And the Emancipation Proclamation of January 1st, 1863, was not enforced there until after the Confederacy collapsed. So look at this. The Emancipation Proclamation, that's 1863 to 1865? What? I mean, they were just doing whatever the F they wanted to do. They had no Fs to give down there until the Confederacy collapsed. The name of observance is a portmanteau, which, look at this fun word. A portmanteau is a linguistic blend of words. So Juneteenth comes from the collapsing of June in 19th. How cool is that? So you'll still see Juneteenth parties, Juneteenth gatherings, et cetera, et cetera. So I was thinking that when I first started this chapter and I realized that it was June 18th, I was like, oh, maybe there's going to be some big liberation of Dana here. But not quite yet. Not quite yet. Some symbolism here are all of the names. These are all such biblical names of Alice's children. So Alice, her first child is Joseph. marry Joseph. But Hagar's name would have been Ishmael if she had been a boy. And the children that she lost were Miriam and Aaron. These are all biblical names from the Old Testament. And Hagar says to Dana about it on page... Where is it? Oh, she says here, it's the bottom of 233. They called the baby Hagar. Rufus said it was the ugliest name he'd ever heard, but it was Alice's choice and he let it stand. I thought it was the most beautiful name I had ever heard. I felt almost free, half free, if such a thing was possible, halfway home. I was gleeful at first, secretly elated. I even kidded Alice about the names she chose for her children, Joseph and Hagar, and the two others whose names I thought silently, Miriam and Aaron. I said, someday Rufus is going to get religion and read enough of the Bible to wonder about those children's names. Alice shrugged. If Hagar had been a boy, I would have called her Ishmael. In the Bible, people might be slaves for a while, but they didn't have to stay slaves. So if you look up who Hagar is in the Old Testament, So Hagar, I mean, she's got a story here. Hagar was the wife, let's go here, in Genesis. So Hagar is in Genesis, but she's also in Islam, and she's also in Baha'i religion. So in Genesis is part of the Torah, but it's also part of the Old Testament. And I think it's also overlaps with the Quran a bit. So Hagar was the Egyptian servant of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Sarah had been barren for a long time and couldn't fulfill God's promise to Abraham that Abraham would be the father of many nations. You know, Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham, and I am one of them. So were you. Did you ever sing that in Vacation Bible School? Is it just me? So she says, hey, take Hagar and make a baby with her, take her as a second wife. This is very kind of like Handmaid's Tale, if you watch that show. Or so Hagar gets pregnant, and then of course, you know, Sarah, Abraham's wife, is not actually happy with the situation. So Hagar runs away. God tells her to come back. She comes back. She has a son. Her son's name is Ishmael, which was Alice's second choice of names. And then eventually Sarah gave birth to Isaac, and the tension between them kind of sparks again. And then Hagar and Ishmael run away, and they go to Egypt. So she escapes slavery with her son. And then Miriam in the Bible, Miriam and Aaron were brother and sister, and Miriam was one of the first female prophets in the Bible, which I did not know. Kind of badass. Anyways, so all these names, you know, definitely sometimes they have a lot of symbolism to them. So it's good to just kind of like poke around. You could write a whole paper on this if you really were, you know, down with biblical and literary studies and biblical allusions. But anyways, I think that's it. Okay, I think that's it for today. I will post a new post for you, reading and discussion post, as we wrap up this book. And please finish reading Kindred for next week. That'll be our last conversation on it. There will be office hours on Thursday morning in case you have any questions. And for those of you that are behind on a couple of the reading and discussion posts, just please catch up. We only have 5 more weeks of class. And please also, if you would like to do any of the extra credit options, please complete them, and you can just email them to me as well. So, and if you're not sure what they are, go back and read the announcements on the Blackboard posts, because that's where I gave you options of what to do. Oh, there is one more, and I'll send an announcement about this, that you could watch the time travel movie. That was the other announcement. So you could watch Queen and Slim and write about how it's a slave narrative / neo-slave narrative. You could write about See You Yesterday as a Black Lives Matter time travel narrative, and how that does and doesn't connect to Kindred. And where was one more extra credit option? Oh, watch any sort of movie on slavery and explain what you learned from it and how it does or doesn't connect to kindred. Okay. I think that's it for today. I hope you guys are doing well and feeling okay, and your families are healthy. And let me know if you need anything. All right. I miss you. Love you. Bye.